his egg, because that's a good place to start the story. Now, you may notice right away that he's got these great big eyes and it makes him look cartoony. But in actuality, infant T-Rexes probably did have big eyes. In fact, a lot of animals have big eyes. It makes them look cute, and when you're cute, your parents want to take care of you. It's part of something called altruism. Now, you might also notice he's got a little spike on the top of his nose, and this is called an egg tooth. When an animal, such as a reptile or bird, is born, it uses that tooth to just kind of chip out of its shell. And that tooth falls off very quickly after it's born. Nests of meat-eating dinosaurs that have been found are sort of these big mounds that could be, mud or sand. And the parenting dinosaur would have probably also added all kinds of organic materials, including, sticks and leaves. And when this material decomposed, it created heat. And this heat helped incubate the eggs. In fact, lizards and birds do this a lot nowadays. Now, when the chicks hatch, they're going to start to chirp or croak or make whatever noise they made. And that's a cue for mom. Now, you notice on mom, I didn't give her the angry eye. I gave her a much more gentle expression. And that's because she's here to protect her babies and not eat them. Dad, on the other hand, well, he's in the background sleeping. I don't think dinosaurs spent their days running around, roaring at each other, attacking everything in sight. If you look at footage of carnivores in the wild, well, they sleep a lot. And that's because carnivores eat lots of meat. And meat is hard to digest. And when you digest, it makes you tired. Now, we have our T-Rex family. But what other dinosaurs lived at the exact same time and place as T-Rex? Well, there's some famous ones like Edmontosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, and the armored Ankylosaurus. But probably the most famous and common dinosaur in that time and place would have been Triceratops. T-Rex probably lived in smaller family groups, like predators do. But Triceratops, on the other hand, probably lived in gigantic herds, like buffalo or bison. Now, you notice he's got the baby with him, and the babies probably would have traveled somewhere in the center of the group for protection. Triceratops itself was a pretty formidable opponent for a T-Rex. I mean, it was big. It was about 30 feet long. It was fairly well armored with that frill protecting the back of its neck, and it also had 3 gigantic horns. But you'll notice that Triceratops and T-Rex are existing in the same space. If you look at the African savanna, you'll see lions hanging out next to the zebras, next to the elephants. They're not always fighting each other. It's looking a little bit barren, so let's add some trees and vegetation. A very common tree at the time, at the end of the Cretaceous, would have been a metasequoia. And metasequoia looks kind of just like a great big Christmas tree, and these still exist today. And in the background, let's just add some ferns, which we also have today. T-Rex was not the only predator around at this time and place. There's also something called dromaeosaurs, or raptors as they're more commonly known. And I've drawn a little pack of them back there behind the ferns, just peeking out, staring at the babies and at the nest, and they're just waiting for mom or dad to leave so they can come in and snatch them, and that's an easy meal. Now, what's a dinosaur picture without a big volcano in the background? The late Cretaceous was a time of great geologic upheaval, and there were a lot of volcanoes all over the place. And if this thing erupted, it would be raining ash for days. Let's liven up the skies with a pterosaur. Now, pterosaurs are not dinosaurs. They're essentially flying lizards. I've added Quetzalcoatlus, and Quetzalcoatlus was probably the largest pterosaur. In fact, if it spread out its wings, it'd be about the size of a school bus. Let's add one more thing to the drawing. Birds. Your everyday, run-of-the-mill birds. These are great to add for a sense of scale, because we know how big a bird is, and when you put it next to a dinosaur, then you know how big those dinosaurs are. All right, so there's our scene, our ecosystem. And looking at it, I'm intrigued. Who is this little guy? And what's he going to grow up to be? A little story playing out now in my head. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity to explore what an individual